Okay, time is 1 o'clock. And at this time, we'll begin our CPS Energy Board of Trustees meeting to be held on October 31st, 2022 at 1 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting, this time I'd like to call the meeting to order and have Ms. Shanna Ramirez to confirm the quorum.
Yes, sir. We have Vice Chair Gonzalez, we have Trustee Steen, Trustee Romero, and yourself. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, next, item number 2, we have our safety message, invocation, and pledge of allegiance.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ricardo Renteria, here with the safety message and invocation as well. So first want to review the evacuation procedures so that we're prepared to be safe in the event of an emergency. If you hear the alarm, the fire alarm, please follow the instructions announced through the PA system. If you're asked to evacuate, use the glass door exiting out of the boardroom, which is right back here, to the outside. If that door is blocked, we can go through that back door, and there's another door that leads out to the back as well. Verbally alert others in the room and evacuate. Then move out to the main parking lot in front of the building, which is one out here in the south corner here of the building. So we'll walk around. If that is blocked, we will head out over the bridge over to the AT&T parking lot. In an event of a situation like this, our security team will be monitoring the situation and will notify the appropriate personnel and team members. We also have employees nearby who are trained to administer first aid if needed. Safety is top priority at CPS Energy, and while we hope this information is never needed, we want to be sure we're always safe and ready. Will you please stand with me for an invocation? We thank you for the many blessings you have freely given to each of us. We ask for your presence to guide this meeting of the CPS Energy Board of Trustees. Provide them with the knowledge, compassion, and wise counsel needed as they discuss the business matters on the agenda today. Help us all to remember that we are stewards acting on behalf of our customers, and provide us with grace to serve all people well. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
This time, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica for public comment.
Good afternoon. For this meeting, we have 4 speakers. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and Thomas will cue the timer here for us. Our first speaker is Ms. Henrietta LaGrange, followed by Ms. Meredith McGuire.
Good afternoon. My name is Henrietta LaGrange, member of the Mulberry Street Girl Gang. And one of the reasons that I'm here is one of my friends needed assistance with her electric bill, and because she has her eyesight, she's diabetic and has to have injections in her eyes. I'm glad I was able to drive her to the site where she needed to be. And it's difficult for me because she's my friend, but I want to say that the person that assisted her is Eli Munoz. And when I spoke to him, he said, he was waving at me because I guess it's easy to recognize me without the mask. But somebody was calling him for another job, because he was like, he's in a response team, and he says, I'm sorry I can't go. I'm here with Henrietta LaGrange. And that made me feel good because I'm out there and I'm proud to stop at a that I see because these people need not encouragement, but they need to know that I'm proud of the work they're doing because CPS is very close to me. I've got some pictures here, and I think we should have probably a Hall of Fame or something to put these employees. Oh, and Rudy, and they're saying that they're going to work harder for you and that they want you to have more than a 3-year contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henrietta LaGrange.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Meredith McGuire, followed by Go Lee.
Hello, I am Dr. Meredith McGuire, Emerita Professor of Sociology at Trinity University. I trust that by now all of you have read the Rocky Mountain Institute's evaluation of CPS Energy's resource plan. If not, please put it on your required reading list today. The mayor's office can supply it. Every board member must be able to critically evaluate what CPS ought to be doing. Now that CPS has a new CEO, it is urgent that he and the whole leadership at CPS redo the CPS resource plan, this time using best practices. Implementing those best practices is tied to implementing best practices also in setting rate structures and in creating policies that promote both CPS and community-wide preparedness for greater climate change-related risks. The handout I've sent you illustrates the RMI criticism of CPS Energy's misleading charts. The last time I spoke to this board, I decried all the ways that CPS misrepresents the rate structure. Please read my critiques of that rate structure and CPS misleading charts. It's time for CPS Energy to do over its resource plan using only the best practices as described by RMI. It's time also to do over the rate structure. It's time for CPS Energy to accept the value of distributed energy resources, such as on-site solar array and battery storage, not only because they're renewable, clean energy, but also because they can be part of microgrids that can be a very good protection for the whole city's grid during extreme weather conditions. CPS should also reveal the limitations of its assets in the face of climate change. I strongly urge the board to work with RMI to start these re-evaluations right away. You will get far better data for future decisions, and you'll learn a lot of good models that are already benefiting from the kinds of measures that CPS needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Go Lee, followed by Alan Montemayor.
My name is Go Lee. At this time, I work for small business. I want to address some issues I think are important. As you know, over-consuming fossil energy causes a lot of serious consequences, like energy shortage, energy crisis, global warming, as you know, everybody. And now we appreciate CPS and they make a lot of contribution to develop solar technology. But compared to California uses 30, 50, even more than 50% of solar energy. Texas are only about 10 to 20. You see the difference. So continue, yes, not criticize. You already made a contribution, right? Continue move. Move on. Improve efficiency of solar technology. We work a lot, research and development to improve solar efficiency for 20 years. Very difficult to ask to get support. I know it's difficult. And you work a lot for service. Most of you work for service. So we try again to get the grant from DOE. We need a collaboration. That's one thing. Second is, you have to, I know some university got grants, but for small business, it's a very difficult grants. So we need a collaboration with universities. And probably should do something to make small business and universities and CPS Energy for collaboration, for improve solar efficiency. Solar efficiency now for silicon solar panel is about 2.2. And the new technology, DOE pay attention, silicon carbide has only 2.5%. Not improve too much. We, for example, we work at the solar scanning system that can improve 15 to 35%. So we need a collaboration with universities and CPS Energy. And I hope some organization, I say maybe City of San Antonio, they can make it a collaboration. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What I say again, very appreciate CPS Energy make a lot of contribution to City of San Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Alan Montemayor.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you once again. I will first ask you to look at my T-shirt. It says "The Future Equal Electric." This is a CPS Energy T-shirt that I got at an EV event a couple weekends ago here at CPS Energy. Thank you. It was a great event. I know the mayor drives a Tesla, so I think you guys, it's not much of a sell to go EVs. But, EVs are wonderful. The benefits for the citizens of San Antonio, for CPS Energy, for the city itself from the additional revenues, we really don't have to go into that all that much. So I hope that you will continue to incentivize EVs, to make more fleets EVs, to look at time of use rates, to incentivize after hours charging, et cetera. But it's not enough to just go EV. The source of that energy has to be clean. It has to be renewables. I'm going to have to actually look at my notes here. It can't be coal. It can't be natural gas. The cost of renewables, if no other factor, is the reason to go with renewables. Wind and solar are now beating coal and natural gas as far as new plants. It's the direction that we have to go, and we have to go quickly. I hope that you'll be listening to the Rate Advisory Committee and moving away from coal and natural gas in the future. The benefits to citizens for doing so are manifold. Just the clean air benefits alone are amazing. The benefits to the environment, for reducing CO2, et cetera. So really what I'm asking you today is to kill coal as quickly as possible. I know that there are competing factors for that, but please move expeditiously. Install more wind, solar, and battery storage. Particularly the battery storage, I think, can be very beneficial to all of us. Eliminate the natural gas appliance subsidies that you still have. There's no reason to be pushing people to move towards natural gas when we should be going all electric and clean, renewable all electric. And incentivize efficiency. I know you're already doing a lot. I appreciate what you're already doing, but please move forward with incentivizing efficiency and looking at load shedding and negawatts, which are really critical to moving this all forward. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
I'd like to thank all the speakers. We have our staff and our board are listening, so thank you all.
And that was our last registered speaker, so I'll turn the meeting over back to you, Dr. Mackey.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to move to the CEO's report, item number 5.
All right. Well, today's report is fairly, fairly concise, trying to, give you guys, the board, an idea of what we're working on as an organization, and of course, we'll recognize a group of employees today. Next slide, please. So I want to start off by sharing that the leadership team had an executive strategy session over 2 days in October. The focus really was now that the board has made a determination on my leadership long term, really to come together as a leadership team. When you look at the leadership team's cohesiveness, I will tell you that I will put our leadership team up against any leadership team in our industry. I think that they have a heart for service and they're focused in the right ways, and we will be successful because we've given our leadership team the authority and the accountability to do their jobs. And so we really came together to focus in a few areas. Number one, what type of culture are we trying to build here at CPS Energy? And we had a really great conversation about what culture means and how we're going to get where we're trying to go. Number two, we looked at our strategic plan for next year to really get arms around what we've got to get done, not just really next year, but into our 5-year strategic plan that we've now put out into the community for feedback. And finally, I've had a lot of feedback from our board and from the community about what happens beyond 2027. And so, we will come back to the board. I would love to be able to have a strategic session with the board in early 2023. That is my plan as we move through the transition process and our chairmanship changes over. We will be working with the board to have a strategic session where we could talk to you all about all the things that the leadership team talked about as well. So just a quick overview of the fact that I thought we had a really great strategic session here in San Antonio down at the Brooks campus, and I thought it was time well spent by our leadership team. Next slide. I wanted to cover today the great work that Melissa Sorolla and our corporate communications and marketing team have done to really, expand upon past strategies for engaging the community in the generation planning conversation. The RAC is obviously doing the detailed work on looking at our models and determining a recommendation to the board for what the future of our generation fleet looks like. And I want to thank Dr. Romero for her work in that regard. We have held our first open house on October 6th that, while we had close to 40 people showed up on 2 different sessions, it was really the approach to having an open house where a dialogue could occur that I was really proud of. We got really great coverage. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from the community. That really started a survey process that now has us, latest and greatest stats, up to 430 participants of an online survey that collects information from the community on what they think are priorities as we move forward in this conversation. Of course, we always do that in both English and Spanish. And there are a number of events that will be coming up in the future as we move to the board actually considering this issue in the December, January timeframe. Next slide. So here's the list of upcoming events. I would ask you and your networks, if there's anybody that is interested in this topic that has feedback for us, I would ask you to please encourage them to find a way to participate. We're going to participate everywhere we can be between now and, the December, January timeframe, but we have some very specific opportunities that are listed here that I wanted to cover with the board today. Next slide. I wanted to take a moment to recognize our Lyman Rodeo team. I know they've been here a couple of times now. Our international competition did occur on October 15th. We did have a couple of folks that got real close to the stage to be recognized for their efforts that day. But again, if we can take and represent CPS Energy on an international level and come home safely, then we will take that opportunity as a win. And so I believe that our international team really did a good job of representing CPS Energy in our industry. And I want to thank the leaders who put that together and helped get our people to and from Kansas, in a safe manner. So congratulations to the Lyman Rodeo team for representing us in that regard. We'll have a more detailed conversation coming up here. I did want to cover, just as a lead into that, 12 of 16 metrics remain on track this year. So operationally, I think we're having a really pretty good year this year. Obviously, there's always a couple opportunities we've got. Recordable incident rate, and I'm about to recognize members of our gas team for what they're doing to try to focus on our safety culture. But every year we struggle. This is a difficult business. We had one of the hottest summers on record, and so every year our safety metrics are a challenge for us, and this year is no different, although I do believe that we've performed a little bit better in the summer than we have in the past. And luckily, with the incidents that we have had outside of one employee that did end up, having to seek medical assistance, we've had a pretty good year. Days cash on hand, we obviously, that's been a monthly conversation here. We are moving that metric to at risk from the 170 day metric that we started the year on. So we'll have a conversation about that as part of our performance conversation. And of course, we know we had trouble with a couple of our power plants this summer, so our portfolio commercial availability, which really tracks our availability of our generation during the summer months, we will not meet that one this year, and we will also not meet our customer satisfaction metric, our residential CSAT. The summer months and the oppressive heat and the high bills and high gas prices, obviously, we expected to have an impact on our residential customer sat. We did see an uptick prior to the summer, which tells us that our messaging certainly is in the right space, but we will have some work to do as we move forward on this particular metric, and my team's working on a plan over the next 2 years to get us back where we need to be. Next metric, next slide. So I want to invite in our members of our gas team. We've got a number of efforts going on as it relates to the type of safety culture we're trying to build here at CPS Energy. And this is specifically how we get on track with respect to our recordable incident rate and our safety metrics. So I'm going to ask you all to kind of come up here. Eduardo Espinoza, he's a leak repair foreman. Garrison Lang, he's one of our trainees. Blaine Sines, he's an apprentice in our corrosion control area. Colby McLeod, utility worker. Dylan DiCarlo, journeyman gas troubleshooter. Germán Munoz, he's a leak repair foreman. Shannon Villegas, she's one of our schedulers. David McCord, who's a general designer. Taylor Atkins, journeyman welder. Justin Mooney, who's a journeyman in our gas troubleshooter area. And Alfonso Estrada, who's also a journeyman in our gas troubleshooter area. And we have 2 members of our union, of our National Association of Public Employee Union, Joey Davila and Albert Casillas. Where's Joey and Albert? There we go. Who are leaders on our labor side, along with, of course, our VP, Richard Lujan. I want to thank you all because it takes real conversations about accountability and how, again, my strategy on the safety side has always been, ever since I was in the operational areas as the leader, what we say as leaders certainly matters, but it's how our employees are holding each other accountable in the field on a daily basis that really is where the rubber meets the road, and how we're going to get to build the safety culture that we're looking for here at CPS Energy, so that everybody goes home the way they came to work on a daily basis, safely to their families, which at the end of the day is our goal. So I want to take an opportunity. I know it takes you away from your field work on a daily basis to have conversations about safety. I'm proud of you all for agreeing to be part of our safety culture team at Mission Road in our guest area. And I want to commend you all and wish you well as you work to build the safety culture in our gas business unit that we're looking for. So congratulations and thank you very much. And I think we're going to have a picture taken here to commemorate today. All right.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garza. At this time,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the CEO some questions related to his report? Going back on the monthly performance update, explain to me, since with our fiscal year, we're not even at the end of the third quarter. So how do metrics become unrecoverable when we've got that much time left?
So
You could take each one and explain it.
yeah, so those are measured over a specific time period. So our PCA, for instance, is a measure of our power plants being available over the summertime. So, again, we know exactly what our performance is. Generally, we should be, I believe, at 91, 92%. We were down around 81% because of those two issues that we had with Rio and with Spruce 2. So that one becomes unrecoverable. And with our CSAT score, again, that's a measured score. We'd like to be around 80, 81. I believe we're down, right under 70, through 3 quarters now. So we know that one's going to be unrecoverable. So again, as soon as we know exactly, where we're going to be, we're going to let the board know, when those become unrecoverable.
And then how is customer satisfaction measured?
Deanna, come on up. I believe the third quarter score was pretty low, given the challenges we had with the high bills.
But Ms. Is it done through polling?
It is. We use a third party called Escalent that does customer surveys. So it's a combination of over the phone, web, surveys that we get from customers, everything from residential to our large commercial and industrial. And those are done on a quarterly basis. From a residential standpoint, the feedback that we received, we just received our third quarter results, and those third quarter results indicate that due to the high bills and fuel charges, that customers are dissatisfied based on their overall satisfaction.
Right, and then so you do it 4 times a year?
Yes, sir.
And then you average those?
Yes,
So
sir.
you're figuring there's no way we can get to where we need to be by the end of the year?
Yes, sir. Given the indications that we're seeing, like Rudy said, we did drop below 70 for this latest third quarter. We really just got the results at the beginning of October, but because we knew it was going to be a challenge, we wanted to give the board the heads up that we were already there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
how many do we survey? What kind of pool are we looking at?
It's about a rotating 2,000. We can get you the final numbers.
2,000?
Yes, so we do a sample size as well as we weight it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to move to item number 6, Rate Advisory Committee. Trustee Romero?
Thank you. And you all have a very long additional material in your packet because one of the things in here is that the REC presented a number, that's not even with the questions. No, the questions are in here too. There's just a lot of information in here. So REC keeps moving along. You can see the 3 key focal points from our last meeting. But at each meeting, it becomes, the task gets tougher and tougher as we get more and more data in here, and the RAC is just doing an amazing job of educating themselves on all the information, all the data that is now starting to come in. So in our last meeting, we actually started getting data on how the reference scenario achieves at least some of the ranked objectives. And I'm really appreciating this effort. It's really a classic policy analysis, because instead of just a big dump of information that people have to sort out for themselves, the group first went through this exercise of ranking their objectives. And so now, as they look at the different portfolios, which represent 9 different mixes of generation, they are assessing them with the assistance of the consultants against those objectives. So it's really, the way Reed and staff put this together has been really, really helpful in giving us a lot of information that is also in a very organized manner. So in addition to how helpful this is for RAC, this is a great amount of information that will be helpful to us and to the public at large as we start to sort through the final decisions on this. So just wanted to thank everybody again. Thanks to Reed and Dr. Cantu, and to all the RAC members for sticking with it. We got more than monthly meetings coming up now for the next couple months.
Thank you, Trustee Romero. Any questions or comments?
I do have a question. Again, thank you, Dr. Romero, for leading this. I know it's time consuming, but it's really necessary for us. More than once you mentioned the work, like there's just a lot going on. So my question is, are we still staying within the scope of what the mission is for RAC, just to ensure that we kind of just bring it back? Because there's, again, a lot of, I would say, both internal and external pressure to kind of move it along closer. So that would be my question to you.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I would say definitely yes. We're definitely on this squarely within the scope of generation planning. It's just that it's become so deep necessarily because of the 9 portfolios, and then we'll be assessing the portfolios against different scenarios, which have to do with different market conditions. So the first one we looked at was just the base case scenario. So yes, I think they are staying very much on track, and it is not bleeding out into areas that are not part of this charge.
So again, I haven't participated in a while. So my other question with you would be, is there discussions of phasing, maybe rolling out how we address existing needs while we're still kind of going through everything? That would be my next question.
And maybe Benny can answer this better, but he's done a great job, I think, of answering those questions at RAC. Because I guess if there's one place where RAC starts to again, necessarily move away maybe from the question at hand is, what about the future? What about the future? And Benny has kept us very much on track on what are the current technologies that can help us with our current needs, and really keeping us to that narrower window in terms of what we're looking at. So we are not looking at a 25, 30 years right now. We're looking at more immediate.
I guess for me, always as a trustee, is we hear feedback every board meeting of what should our priorities be. And so while this is happening, I guess as a trustee, where I want to see some action would be, what can we do today to roll out, test, roll out, and while we're still going through all the modeling and all the participations from the community and the organization.
Yes, ma'am. So at this point, we're focused on developing a series of opportunity projects, pilot projects with some of the new emerging technology. Rudy's been very supportive of that. As you know, we went to Korea recently to learn about emerging battery technology that'll address some of the challenges batteries have faced initially. We're talking with the geothermal folks. In fact, we're meeting with some tomorrow at JBSA. We've got 2 companies on contract now to help us with a geothermal pilot process where we can look at resources available and how we can push that forward. And we're also in communications with some folks that are working to develop a hydrogen hub process to our south that have some good ideas there. So we're working on that. And at the same time, we're working to finish up our Flex Power Bundle process that'll give us the coverage we need to cover Braunig while we develop for the other sites.
So maybe this kind of leads to the need for a strategic session, because I feel like there's a lot of competing deliverables that we have, both internally and to the community. And so if we all collectively can kind of visualize and see what those priorities are and see what we can roll out, so there's not scope creep, and then not go through 12 months or 15 months of a pilot and then it not work. So finding a way to be more agile in how we execute and how we also get things delivered.
Can I just add to that too, with all the charts that we got at the last meeting? We got so much data, so many charts, and you can see it's starting to get built in there with the feedback we got from Charles River Associates, for example, with a particular portfolio, you will start to see hydrogen potentially coming in at the end, but they're being very realistic about how it's too soon now, but maybe at the end of this point, there's a little bit of a tick with whatever color that was. Not that the RAC is entirely embracing hydrogen, I don't want to speak for them, but with different technologies, you can see them starting to come in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we would like to move to item number 7, a monthly performance update by Ms. Lisa Lewis.
Good afternoon, Chair, Trustees. I am not going to repeat the slide that Rudy went over with you in his report. I am going to give you a little bit of additional context around the metrics that are currently at risk or unrecoverable. As related to the people metrics, specifically on customer satisfaction, as Deanna mentioned, we know we're at the point now where third quarter, it's absolutely impossible to recover even with fourth quarter numbers coming in. And so we will not accomplish the target that we had set for ourselves at 79. We knew it was difficult going in this year. It was an uphill climb. We had a challenging year last year, and third quarter is always the most challenging given bills, given heat, and now with rising gas prices, it just compounded the issue. I would like to share that we now have, we've achieved our 65,000 customers on the affordability program. We're currently at 65,854. And the total residential ARPA credits applied has increased to just shy of 18,000 for a total of $19 million. So we continue to make effort there. When it comes to the recordable incident rate, while our current performance has improved compared to this time last year, it is not we have not achieved what we challenged ourselves to accomplish this year. So we've had some gaps in hazard awareness and body positioning when doing specific tasks that have led to the majority of the incidents for this year. We expect to end our year at 1.68 against our target of 1.41, and so it's definitely an at-risk metric unless we really make some substantial changes. For the operational metrics, I do actually want to mention a happy note. Congratulations to Team Delivery Business. Our reliability metrics are on track. Our reliability performance is about 20% better this year compared to this time last year, and that is primarily attributable to the work we have done with reclosers. So automated reclosers help manage the grid and decrease outage time, so that's duration. And then also frequency, the amount of tree trimming done this year, over 369 miles of tree trimming completed this year helps decrease frequency. And so in that sense, we have something happy to report. Rudy already talked to you about power plant availability. And because we have ended the summer run, we know that is unrecoverable. And then the financial services metrics for days cash on hand, we have targeted ourselves to achieve 170 days cash on hand. That is aligned to our budget. Our credit rating agency threshold is 150. We expect to end the year at 160. So not at the level we challenged ourselves to achieve, but still within the expectation of the rating agencies. And we will continue to monitor bad debt and accounts receivable to keep that in balance. That is all I have to share with you.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments? Trustee Steen?
So on the days cash on hand, did you just not make the statement that we weren't going to get to 170?
We will not accomplish 170, which is our internal metric for ourselves. That's the metric we aligned to our budget at the start of the year. We will accomplish what the credit rating agencies expect, which is to be above 150. We are projecting that we will be at 160 at the end of this year.
So the metric is aligned that way?
The metric is actually pushing ourselves to be even better than what the credit rating agencies expect. So we'll be below our target metric that we challenge ourselves with, but above where the rating agencies expect us.
I think respectfully, it sounded like you just said it's unrecoverable because if our target was 170 and you're saying that
That's right.
and we're only going to get
Target-
to 160.
That's right.
So-
The tier one is at risk. It is unlikely to be recoverable, but things happen. But we will not meet our self-set target of 170. It's highly unlikely, but it could still happen.
All right.
You want to add anything to that? Okay.
Good.
Corey says he does not want to add anything to that.
So, Ms. Lewis, I wanted to ask about customer bad debt. Should I get Ms. Hardwick to come up?
Either Deanna or Corey, I'm sure.
Thank you, Ms. Hardwick. For many months now, customer bad debt has hovered around $175 million. What is it as of 9/30/22?
For the total customer accounts receivable past due is 195, a little over 195 million. For our residential active customers, that's a little over 87 million that is past due, 50 million that is eligible for disconnection. From a commercial standpoint, we have about 6 million that's past due and 7 million that's eligible for disconnection.
Well, thank you for a lot of information. We've been using this 175. What is that? Is that customer bad debt? I mean, residential bad debt?
That's the combined.
It's combined?
Yes, sir.
So what is the figure to compare to 175 as of 9/30/22?
It was up to 195.
So it's gone from 175 to 195?
Yes, sir.
And so for a good while, we've had around 180,000 customers who are at least 30 days past due on their CPS payments, representing about 20% of our customers. So as of 9/30/22, what's the customer count and what's the percentage?
It's still about 18% for our total customers. It's about 153 on our residential side and close to 10,000, 153,000 on residential and 10,000 on commercial.
So it was 100. I'm just trying to do apples to apples. So we've been talking about 180,000 customers. What's that number now? What's that comparable number?
The total number is still around 180. It's a little over 180, but in comparison with our total customer count. So it's the same customers or customers that are still, what we're seeing is some customers become current and then other customers
roll on
move
and
back
roll on.
in. So the customer count isn't moving. It moved up a little bit. It's still in the 180s, so we can get you the final number there, but it still represents 18% of our total customer.
Okay, and
active
Ms. Lewis
balances.
may have answered this, but have all the ARPA funds been expended?
Not yet. We are, as of the end, or as of right now, we are closer to the 20 million, but as of the end of September, we were at about 19 million for a little under 18,000 customers that had received assistance.
And you've told us in previous meetings what you're doing to alleviate this problem. Anything new that we ought to know about?
Yes, now that we've been able to surpass or finalize the summer session, so if September kind of wrapped up summer and heat from a terms and conditions, we've been able to increase, we doubled the amount of final notices, which basically says if we don't receive payment in the next 5 days or any type of arrangement, we will disconnect the customer's account. And we have about a 50% response rate to the final notice. At the same time, we have increased the number of disconnections that we are able to do each day as we've been able to bring in more staff. So customers that, if their account gets disconnected, that they are able to contact customer service and get assistance there. So we have been able to increase our collection activities. We've also been able to bring our write-off process a little bit sooner. So instead of waiting the standard calendar days that we were doing for write-offs, we've been able to escalate that, and over October and November, we plan on being able to do some additional write-offs.
All right, and are you getting to the point where you're considering a time-limited regulatory asset or using some type of short-term debt to mitigate this problem?
I think that still remains, one of the options we had talked about during the rate case and with the city, but nothing new or different from last month to this month, as it just being another option that could be out there in the future. I think we really have to let Deanna's process really take hold over the next 3 or 4 months before we can ultimately make judgment on the success or lack of success of that.
Mr. Kaczynski, while you're up there, so last meeting you told us you were going to be meeting with the credit rating agencies. Did those meetings occur?
Yes, we had one meeting with S&P in advance of our remarketing. The other two were good with the information, and we didn't need to meet with them.
In the meeting with the S&P, were they interested in what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. They're interested in a lot of things, and this is one of those items that we brought up and we discussed thoroughly, and Deanna was on the call as well and had that discussion with them.
And is there goal setting involved in terms of how many disconnects and all of that? Is that being talked about?
Yeah, Deanna had talked about, the rate at which she had been disconnecting and how she's hoping to double that, on a daily basis. But, in a broad sense, yeah.
Ms. Hardwick, could you give me a sense of these goals that you've set?
Certainly, sir. So from a disconnection standpoint, we can do about a little close to 500 account disconnections in a day. That's a combination of having to drive out to do a manual disconnect. The majority of those are AMI over the air. On top of that, we doubled our final disconnection notices from 1,250 to 2,450 or 2,500. So we've increased, we doubled our disconnections as well as our final notices.
So that's an activity per day?
Yes, sir.
500 per day?
Yes, sir.
All right, because that's a big number you're confronting.
Yes, sir.
And so you're going to have to do some pretty heavy lifting there.
Yes, sir. So we also added, it's been a long time, but we've added, just in the month of October, we added over 30 energy advisors to be able to handle the call volume, or work in our walk-in centers. So we are seeing capacity being reached at each of our walk-in centers. They're not really big, so when customers come in, if we have a occupancy that we're allowed in there, so we stand up cover and offer water out to our walk-in center. So we take that into consideration as well as our ability to do staffing and support the customers.
And as you look ahead on this, you have windows to do disconnects?
Yes, sir.
So the window's open, so to speak, right now. When does it close again, and when does it open as we look toward the end of the fiscal year?
The biggest challenge that we will have will be around weather. So if it gets below freezing, then according to our customer terms and conditions and to be safe in our community, we do not disconnect. We also will stand down around Thanksgiving and Christmas. But aside from any weather or in those holidays, we're going to continue up until the point that we get to the heat. Temperature is really the biggest indicator for us of when we can disconnect.
And what's around Thanksgiving in December? How many days around those?
It's usually the week of Thanksgiving and the week of Christmas.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes, can I build upon one of the questions that Trustee Steen asked? What is the dollar value of the 150 residentials that are not disconnected or could be disconnected? And what is the dollar value of the 10,000, if I understood correctly, commercial customers? What is the dollar value?
Commercial customers, it's about $13 million. And the residential, it's about $140 million.
Okay, so business is 13 million and residential is how much?
140.
140 million? Okay.
The average capacity.
Vice Chair, let me just add on top of that. The 196, going back to Mr. Steen's question, the rest of that, which is about $46 million, are accounts that are no longer active. So, those are folks who are, it's either a business that's no longer, that went out of business, or residential customer who's moved and left a balance behind. So we're accelerating our write-offs of those accounts because we know that, we'll send that to a collection agency. When those customers seek to establish service again, we would have an opportunity to collect at that point.
Right.
But so the number's around 150 million that we're actively pursuing.
Right. So the reason why I was asking that question, just like anything else, sources of revenue, right? Your sources of revenue come from different sources, residential as well as customers. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, your outreach, we talk a lot about the disconnect, but it seems to be just focused on residents. But really at the end of the day, how are we also working with businesses, not just residents, right? And I know you mentioned that we've hired some new energy advisors, but do we have also business ambassadors that are working
Yes, ma'am, we do.
They're small
So,
businesses or large businesses?
Yes, ma'am. So our energy to business team, it grew from one person to we're now up to three, and we're going to continue to do that. That's more for our small businesses. And those team members, led by Ricky DeLeon, they're out there literally knocking on doors. If we see customers, small business customers that have been struggling, we're going out to them. We're not waiting for them to come to us.
Okay.
At the same time, for our commercial customers, we have increased the number of key account managers that we have, and it's the same thing. As a team, my organization meets every week. We look at all the customer accounts that are eligible for disconnection, and we talk about what we can do to lead with compassion and find a way to help these customers get on track. We do have an approach to what we can collect up front and then how we can make it more manageable in the long term.
Right. I never doubt the passion that you have. I really sincerely appreciate everything you do. A couple of other questions. Now, the people that we've hired, are these third-party individuals that are responsible to do the cold calling and to also, are the energy advisor team, is it insourced or outsourced?
We actually have a combination, so we do have 2 outsourced call centers.
Let me finish that. The reason why I'm asking that question is that usually historically as a subcontractor or as a prime contractor to any contract that we are responsible for contractually, right? We have metrics to meet. So obviously you guys are pushing hard internally what you can control.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, what are those third parties that we've awarded contracts to? What are they doing? And are they meeting their metrics to help us alleviate what's very obvious that we cannot, and we're going straight into the holidays. So far it seems like it's steady state, 150, 153. We don't want to see that grow to 200,000 by the time we are at December 31st, January 31st, February, as you know, the way the patterns are and how we spend and how we recover. So my question is, are we also holding accountable those contractors that we've awarded? Again, we have contractual agreements to helping alleviate this.
Yes, ma'am. So we have 2 collection agencies that we work with that we hold, they have metrics according to our contract that we hold them accountable for, and then 2 outsourced call centers, and that's about availability and quality of service for them and the collections agency. We can share with you what are their requirements. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Mackey, I've got a question. Mr. Kaczynski, it might help if we put up a slide. It's slide 23 of the add-on. It's the walk forward. I always think this is a good tool, and thank you for doing this. But how are you accounting for what we just talked about in this walk forward? It seems like you're underplaying it in the walk forward.
No, I think the bar, the red bar that says 49.6 is us acknowledging that we're not seeing the past due accounts go down, and we're increasing effectively bad debt expense. So what that has a function of doing is reducing revenue, and we're noting that there. And that's the change of where we thought the year we began to now. So, I mean, 50 million is a big deal in terms of a change. It's offset a little bit by the ARPA funds, which we note there, which have been helpful. But, I mean, that's where you would find what we're talking about reflected in this waterfall.
But we're getting close to being 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, and I heard earlier a number of 190 million. Is that right?
As the past due total balance sheet amount?
Right. And so then, what am I missing? It's showing that you called high age receivables. You're showing it as 50 million there.
Well, you wouldn't
big
note the full balance as a bad debt expense. So we look at our historical past due in different tranches and come up with an accounting forecast of how you'd measure the bad debt expense. So as a comparison, last year, both the last 2 years, it was closer to about 60 million worth of bad debt expense. We thought going into this year, we'd be closer to 10, 12 or so million. And so what this 50 million reflects is we're kind of looking like last year. So we're tacking on another 50 to the previous 10 or 12, and we're kind of going to end the year with a bad debt expense similar to that. So this would be an income statement expense reflected by the reduction of revenue. The 195 is a balance sheet item that reflects kind of a view of all the past dues. And not all of them are going to be unrecoverable. We're just acknowledging a lot more of them are by this amount.
But even with this earlier conversation we've had, you stick with that, the 50 million there?
For now, I do, and I think that's pretty significant and in line with past years. I mean, we'll have another quarter worth of information to see if we adjust it, which we do every month if we need to, but this isn't hiding much. I mean, this is putting us in just the same kind of view that we had last year, which was, not a great view either.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Yes, okay, thank you. Ms. Ramirez, would you please take the board to executive session?
Yes, sir. At this time, the board is going to recess into an executive session to discuss matters that have been duly posted under several provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including consultation concerning attorney-client matters under Section 551.071, deliberations and other authorization on real property under Section 551.072, prospective gifts or donations under Section 551.073, personnel matters under Section 551.074, security personnel or devices under Section 551.076, to deliberate regarding security audits and devices under Section 551.089, to deliberate under the Texas Government Code, Section 418.183, subsection F, about confidential information under the Texas Homeland Security Act, economic development negotiations under Section 551.076, and to deliberate, vote, or take final action on competitive matters under Section 551.086. It's 1:57 p.m. as we go into executive session.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. At this time, we'll proceed to executive session. Thank you.
We're all of it.
Ms. Ramirez, would you please bring the board back from executive session?
Yes, sir. It is 2:46 PM and the board has concluded executive session. I can confirm that there were no votes taken and no matters were discussed that were not part of the posted agenda. We do have a quorum. All members are present.
Thank you, Shanna. At this time, we'll move to item number 9, approval of consent items. The minutes of the regular board meeting held on 7/25/2022, the minutes of the special board meeting held on 8/23/2022, and the minutes held on regular board meeting held on 9/6/2022. We have a payment of the City of San Antonio for September 2022. We have financial policies annual review, renewal, and then we have F, procurement items, general services, engineering, procurement, construction for the Midtown, 138 kV installation substation. We have commodities and material goods for item number 2, wood poles. Number 3, commodity and wood material goods, wire, cable, additional funding request. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Romero. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Gonzalez. Do we have any questions or comments, board? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? None? So ayes carry. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll move to item number 10, Operation Oversight Committee, meeting held on 8/19. Then we have the Technology Resilience Committee meeting held on 9/28/2022. Then we have the Nomination Committee meeting held on 10/10/2022. Do we have any recommendations on that? There's discussions? Go ahead.
I do have a discussion item for the Personnel Committee, and that is some nomination information.
Which one?
Nominating you, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
that's item number 11.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, item number 11. Okay, well, then these minutes, we could please proceed with putting these in the minutes for the next board agenda. Thank you. Okay, item number 11, vote to reappoint the trustee representing the Southeast Quadrant to serve a second term on the CPS Energy Board. Approve related resolution. And at this time, I'd like to say something. Before you make a recommendation, Trustee Gonzalez. It has been my absolute pleasure to serve as a board member and for the last 2 years as board chair. These past years have afforded me so many opportunities to serve the organization, the community, and the board in critical ways. We've had some major challenges like the winter when the power was out for longer than comfortable for many, the rate increase, and also major accomplishments, the seating of a new and amazing board member, Ms. Trustee Romero, the interim CEO, and finally, the new and mighty CEO, Rudy Garza. All these great things were done under the governance of this board. You all have been incredible partners through many of the good and challenging times. I have been so fortunate to have worked very closely with the City Council and the Mayor and have learned so much about the knowledge and passion it takes every day to run a city of this magnitude. Thank you, Mayor Nuremberg. Energy and the quest to keep it safe, reliable, and affordable is no joke. It's something you think about as you go to bed at night and as you wake up each morning. Energy deeply matters to each of us. Getting this mix of coal, gas, and solar and wind just right means life or death to some. What we do each day is serious, and out of the need, the development of the rate committee emerged. The committee has been yet another major feat for this board. They have been spot on in thinking and research that help us to make important and informed recommendations. As we prepare for the next year and a new chair, Janie, it will be my duty to ensure her success and that she knows what to expect and how to navigate this terrain. As such, effective next month, Chairman One-on-One begin. I will ask Janie to shadow me over the next transitional months and at times to prep and lead the meeting. I will help to build her capacity as she takes on her new responsibilities. I trust that all of us will assist in successful transition to chair for Trustee Gonzalez. It is my pleasure to serve the board for another 5 years. I will bring to this board the learned knowledge and commitment of service should I be fortunate enough to continue on the CPS Energy Board. Once again, thank you and allow me to preside as chair and join me in wishing Janie the very best in her new role. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. I've had the privilege of first being onboarded by Mr. Steen, my colleague, Mr. Steen, who was, again, very supportive, and I have the distinct pleasure to continue to work with you, and also it's been an honor to work with you. It has been challenging, but we've made a really good team, so thank you, Dr. Mackey, for all you've done. Again, I'm looking forward to working with everybody on the diocese. But on that note, what I really would like to do as a personnel chairwoman is to go ahead officially move that Trustee Dr. Willis Mackey be nominated for another 5-year term on the CPS Energy Board of Trustees, and that such election be submitted to City Council for confirmation by the way of proposed resolution. Ms. Ramirez, please read this resolution.
This is a resolution electing Dr. Willis Mackey to CPS Energy Board of Trustees. Whereas Dr. Willis Mackey, a resident of the southeast quadrant of the CPS Energy service area, was first appointed to the CPS Energy Board to serve a 5-year term commencing on April 6, 2018, and expiring on January 31st, 2023. And whereas Dr. Mackey has expressed a willingness and desire to continue to serve on the board, and whereas the board appreciates Dr. Mackey's expertise, his contributions to the work of the board, and his willingness to continue service. And whereas, under the provisions of CPS Energy bond ordinances, Dr. Mackey is eligible to serve another 5-year term as a member of the Board of Trustees following the expiration of his current term of service in January 2023. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of CPS Energy that Dr. Willis Mackey is hereby elected for City Council consideration and confirmation to serve a second 5-year term on the CPS Energy Board of Trustees, beginning effective February 1, 2023 through January 31st, 2028. Witnesses under my hand and seal.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I move approval of the resolution.
Second.
I mean, I support it as well. I wasn't sure we needed to do roll call first. If you lead that or I lead that.
There is a motion. There was a motion to nominate the chair. There was a motion to approve the resolution, a second for the motion to approve. My recommendation is would be consolidate the motion, and the current vote would be to both nominate the chair, approve him as a candidate, and approve the resolution so read. Is there any discussion on those motions?
I'll just, I'll make a couple comments. Just thank you again, Dr. Mackey, for your great service. As we were getting into the first part of your, well, actually, it was maybe a year in or so, I thought to myself, why the heck did you sign up to do this? We're getting into the worst part of our recovery from the winter crisis, but I think you led us with grace and patience, and I've gotten to appreciate your service as we've gone through the last few years. So thank you very much for stepping up and doing this, and I look forward to your continued service as a colleague and also as a member of this board. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
With no further discussion, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Vice Chair Gonzalez?
Yes.
Trustee Steen?
I've got a question. So according to the agenda, we're voting to reappoint the trustee representing the Southeast Quadrant to serve a second term on the CPS Energy Board and approve related resolution, which is the one you read. Are we doing something beyond that?
No.
No, sir.
What were you were talking about a chairman?
No. That's
No,
just
sorry.
resolution.
We had we had a motion to nominate the chair for his second term, and then we had a motion to approve the resolution. I just suggested that we consolidate those motions to a single vote.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Mayor? Trustee Romero?
Yes.
Chair Dr. Mackey?
Abstain.
The motion carries 4 in favor, 1 abstain.
Can you vote on that?
We already voted. We already passed it.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to serve as chair. Thank you all very much, and pleasure to serve this board for the past 5 years. Okay, as we move on to item number 12, the energy delivery services winter preparation update. Mr. Richard Medina.
Just waiting for the slide deck. Okay, there it is. So good afternoon, Chair Dr. McAtee, trustees. Last month, Benny and his team gave an update on power generation and their preparedness for this winter season. And so today, me and my team are going to give you an update on what we're doing to prepare for this winter season. So on our agenda today, I'm going to cover our org structure. We're going to talk a little bit about our system overview, and then I'll turn it over to my team to talk about system operations, transmission, distribution, engineering, as well as construction and maintenance. So here on the slide here is my leadership team. So Leroy Perez is our VP of Operations. Rick Maldonado, he's our VP of Transmission, Distribution, Engineering, and Daryl Clifton is our VP of Construction and Maintenance. So a little bit about our system. So we cover Bexar County. We serve a little over 900,000 customers. We have 1,500 miles of transmission that serve 96 substations, and across our territory, we have about 8,000 miles of overhead line and 6,700 of underground lines. And so next, I'll turn it over to Leroy, and he'll cover operations.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, Chair Dr. Mackey and trustees. Again, my name is Leroy Perez. I am the Vice President of System Operations and Reliability. I'm happy to be here to go over our winter prep items. I wanted to start off with providing you an overview of my area operations. My area is the one that runs and manages our Energy Management Center, also called EMC. This is an area that is staffed by our distribution system operators. They're staffed on a 24/7, 365 basis. We monitor the electric grid, both on the transmission distribution side. This team does a lot of coordination with ERCOT. Here in a bit, I'm going to get into a little bit of that coordination. My team also manages the real-time data that comes through SCADA, also known as our supervisory control and data acquisition. My team also is the one that manages the reliability and vegetation management program. Also have a team that does a lot of the inspection and repair of our transformer and distribution automation devices. This is led by our transformer shop. Lastly, my area is also the one who really leads a lot of the collaboration with our partner agencies, which here in the next slide I'm going to get into some more. So our winter prep starts off with 3 main key aspects. The first one is always driven around safety, with preparing our employees for some of the conditions that they can encounter during the winter season, and especially during some of our cold snaps. Daryl Clifton, VP of Construction and Maintenance, is going to really get into some of the aspects. Both me, Daryl, and Rick's organization all do this with our employees, but Daryl's going to cover that. The other aspect is preparing our operational aspects. Currently, we're working on system improvements. My team, the system operators, help with a lot of the switching and outage coordination. We also do a lot of refresher training. I'm going to cover that in the next slide. This is the season where we currently have outages in the transmission system. So we do partner with our transmission planning team under Rick Maldonado, and we look at the load flow analysis on the transmission system. I'm happy to report that there are no current issues that are reflected with that report. And then lastly, equipment. We do a lot of inspection and testing as we prepare for the winter season, and we identify and correct deficiencies as needed. I wanted to highlight some of the preparations, my area, beginning with load shed. We've made several enhancements over the last 2 years or so. The first one is we have significantly increased our load shed capacity. What this really helps is in the event we ever do get into another load shed, it'll really minimize the impact on the customer's off time. So increasing capacity really helps with that. We're able to enable increasing this capacity. We've been installing smart switches. These smart switches will allow us to pick up less critical load beyond some of the critical facilities as we enter this season. Another aspect that we've done is we've developed a lot of internal situational awareness dashboards that'll really give the team and my team the ability to communicate with our partner customer strategy teams in the event we need to communicate. The other one I mentioned, training. So my area team system distribution transmission operators do a lot of training. We coordinate and participate with ERCOT and as well do our own internal Black Start training. Also do load shed readiness. Our team is always ready for load shed readiness. And lastly, just wanted to get into some of the drills and exercises that my team participates. With ERCOT, we do a winter and severe weather drill. We just recently had a fall outage coordination meeting with ERCOT. This is where we get to talk about our outages and just identify any potential risks and if there's ways of mitigating them. And lastly, as I mentioned, we do collaborate with the City of San Antonio's Emergency Operations Center. We do conduct joint natural disaster exercises. And that's when a lot of the agencies that support emergencies come together. We also, during these drills, activate our internal incident management team. So communication and collaboration with our partners, really critical for our winter preparedness. So I'm going to turn it over now for Rick Maldonado to cover some of his winter prep.
Good afternoon, distinguished board. Certainly a pleasure to be here today to introduce my team and what we do. So it was really tough to boil down everything that we do into 2 slides, but what I've done is I've provided some highlights of what we do. So as the name indicates, in engineering and grid transformation, we really look at doing all the planning, building and constructing of all the wires, essentially all the wires that go from the power plant to our backyards, and then Deanna's team and customer engineering takes it onto the side of the customer's house into the meter. So I broke this down into 3 large buckets. So on our transmission side, as Leroy alluded to, we do a lot of our planning, which looks at both in the summertime and wintertime planning, looking at extremes, which requires frequent coordination with ERCOT and our neighboring utilities. We also, this is also the group that facilitates a lot of the interconnects from large solar and battery interconnect providers that want to participate in the grid. We've seen a lot of activity since the beginning of the year. Approximately over a dozen full interconnect studies that we perform for entities that want to participate in the grid. On the substation space, we're doing all of the design and build of the substations, including a brand new one that was just approved, the Midtown, which is our first deployment of a gas-insulated substation. Offers tremendous amounts of benefits. Smaller footprint, much smaller footprint than our traditional substation. So we're really looking at getting some internal expertise and looking for future opportunities there. We currently are doing a variety of new transmission substation expansions, new substations that really support the growth of our community. And so that's not only just residential load, but also large industrial customers, manufacturing, and data centers. In the distribution space, a tremendous amount of activity since the introduction of distributed energy resources. So this team not only looks at system improvements to help with reliability, but also how to manage the influx of distributed energy resources to not just deal with them, but potentially leverage them to solve some of the issues associated with decarbonization. This is also the team that is overseeing the smart switch deployment. You've probably heard it as reclosers, and there's a picture right above it of what it looks like, which really has direct impacts on improving reliability and resilience. This team is also looking at microgrid deployments. As a matter of fact, this past weekend, we did some testing with a third party on a microgrid. It was a partial success. We learned a lot. We have some more work to do there. But this is the type of forward-looking technologies that we're also doing in addition to just operating the grid as we've always done. In terms of preparing for, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Can you elaborate what, I think it's EMP, so I'm assuming Energy Management Plants Resiliency? What is the acronym for that?
That is for, yes, yeah.
I was thinking, thank you, that's all I had a question for, thanks.
Yeah, and we're doing collaborative evaluations with those. Okay. Back to preparing for winter. Like everything else we do here at CPS Energy, it all starts with our people. Not just getting them prepared to work in the elements, which at times can be quite harsh. Working and driving is something that we take serious under those hazardous conditions. But also, thanks to the drills that Leroy's team leads, we're able to better prepare roles and responsibilities and how to prepare and respond to any kind of emergency events. From an operational perspective, we also look at running load flows and contingency studies. So we do those throughout the year, but particularly in preparation for summer and winter, we look at those high peak conditions where we will experience overloading scenarios. We're able to develop mitigation plans that we could either have engineering solutions to, or in the cases of something that is more elaborate, then we develop strategies for how to deal with those contingencies should they occur, and that requires a lot of coordination with our operations team. And the last aspect is with our equipment. So we weatherize equipment, a lot of moving parts out there that needs to be maintained and readied for freezing conditions. We also take the opportunity to check all of our sensors so that we can get precursors of any pending items before they get to the critical stage. And I believe that is my last point. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Daryl Clifton.
Good afternoon, Chair Dr. Mackey and trustees. My name is Daryl Clifton. I am the VP of Construction and Maintenance Services. I know my other two peers here have, their teams did a lot of different things, but really my team is the one that gets out there, builds and maintains the 15,000 miles of underground and overhead distribution system. When you put all those teams together, we have both internal and contract crews and the people that manage the contract crews. We have over 140 crews that are on our system every day, building and maintaining that system. and they're also available for emergency response. When you talk about emergency response, you know, always a lot of questions about mutual aid. We are members of 3 mutual aid groups. You know, that is for both, you know, requesting mutual aid as well as providing mutual aid. The first one is American Public Power Association, which y'all are all familiar with. That's the actual group that where we were requested to support Florida during Hurricane Ian. When you have events that are, you know, more in the Texas and Gulf Coast area, we also are a member of the Texas Mutual Assistance Group. While it says Texas on there, it also includes Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. In the membership there's only 25 members in that. It's some of the larger public power companies here in Texas, as well as the major investor-owned utilities, you know, Encore, CenterPoint, Energy, AEP also. Now, we also have a local mutual aid group through the Texas Public Power Corridor, which includes CPS Energy, New Braunfels Utilities, LCRA, and Austin Energy. Now, one thing that's unique about that, we're looking at not only the traditional mutual aid product that a lot of utilities provide, we're also looking at you know, sharing resources during cyber events. And earlier this month, we actually had a tabletop at LCRA that you know, was really, you know, how would utilities respond to a cyber event? So it was a really good learning experience. On how we prepare for the winter, like everybody else said, you know, our people and our employee preparations are the most important thing. You know, my guys are out in the field. My guys and gals are out in the field, are working in the elements. We have to really train them on recognizing the signs of cold stress. You know, we've just went over the hazardous driving conditions, but you know, that's just not a one-time message. Every time there's hazardous weather coming up, we are constantly talking to people about driving in hazardous weather, especially when it becomes icy weather. You know, we're doing a lot of our personal voltage safety equipment checks, changing batteries in them, talking about backfeed awareness, especially if there's a load shed event with the number of customers that have their own generation at their, you know, backup generators at their house. We're doing critical, you know, maintenance on the system, doing a lot of vehicle checks. One thing that we started, you know, we got this in place, you know, during the summer, is when we talk about emergency stock, restoration stock material. We worked with our supply chain. We actually created a new storeroom that is just dedicated to emergency stock. It has about 243 items that we have identified. That's both distribution items and substation and transmission items. We have about 96% of those completely, you know, we have everything that we have requested. There's about, you know, 96% of the items, we have what we need. Some of them we have almost what we need, and we just have a couple of complete stockouts. Also, in preparing for winter, we're also looking at a lot of, you know, not only preparing for winter, but with a lot of the supply chain challenges that we have been experiencing, we've been doing a lot of alternative construction methods. You know, for example, we're looking at different preservative treatment on poles because there is a preservative out there where there are a lot of poles available, and the creosote poles just aren't as available, which is our standard. So we're looking at that, looking at the risk involved with you know, bringing in new materials. And also, you know, we participate in the business continuity exercises also. And that is all I have. And unless there's questions, and I think.
Thank you. We have any questions?
I do. Can you give me an example of a recent business continuity exercise?
Sure. Well, the last one that I participated in was at the beginning of October when we went to LCRA. And it was a cybersecurity attack. And one thing, what's kind of neat about that, we have, like, on some of our substations, we're co-located with LCRA. And it was the scenario was, you know, they found a control house that the door was open. There was a backpack that was in there, and there was a thumb drive, and it had just some names. And as we went in, those names were actually substation names for another utility. So there was just a lot of discussion on how would we communicate with each other when there's a viable threat to one, and we actually, and we think that maybe other, our neighboring utilities involved also.
I'm not sure this falls under you, but one of my recommendations might be for you to consider in the future business continuity exercises with our small business clients. Because again, the threat not only is for our partners, but potentially could be also for our clients. So thank you very much for the presentation. No more further questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I had a couple of questions, might be for Richard. So with our new meteorologist, how does he fit into your planning? I mean, I realize when there's a storm barreling in, he'll play an important part, but ahead of that, what role does he play with your team?
On every storm that's coming in, he's giving us guidance on the type of storm, kind of the areas of town, how severe it's going to be, and we incorporate that into our planning. As far as summer and winter preparedness, Benny's team, along with him, put together those plans on what the extremes are going to be, and then we run all the load flows and all the systems. And they do N-1 contingencies if a power plant goes down or transmission lines are down to make sure that we can still operate even if lines are down.
Okay, so then I guess to the best of his ability, I know he can't see into the future, but if this was the case, he would be telling you this winter has the potential for even worse storms than we've seen before, or not, hopefully.
Yes, so what we do, like this winter, we ran all the analysis based on the peaks of even Winter Storm Uri. And so we're capable of supplying power across the grid with that magnitude. And so whenever there's storms, I mean, we're looking at, there's outages, and we can reconfigure circuits. And so all those electronic reclosers that Rick talked about, our system operator groups can divert power from one circuit to another.
Okay, I guess just my longer-term concern moves from meteorology to climatology so that we could be preparing for the whatever's to come in the future and not just, waiting for that, assuming it'll be like last year or waiting for that storm system to come in. My second question was, though, this makes me feel a lot better, and I think it would make the community feel a lot better. Do you have plans to do maybe like a one-pager to say, here's 10 things that are better since Winter Storm Uri? I think people would really appreciate that, because right about now, people are starting to feel a little anxious.
Yes, that's a great suggestion. We'll do that. We'll work with Melissa's group.
Hello, everybody. Melissa Sorolla, VP of Corporate Communications and Marketing, and we will take you up on that, especially as we get into winter preparedness. We'll work really closely with Richard and Benny's team on doing exactly what you said. Actually, last year, we had a visit to one of our gas plants to show and demonstrate the actions that we were taking for winter preparedness. And along with that will be safety tips and how people can conserve energy this winter as well.
Okay.
I just think that people can handle fairly technical information. It doesn't just have to be happy face, oh, everything's better. There could be really pretty technical things, and people would appreciate that. So thank you.
Great example here, yes.
Thank you. Well, I'm a little disappointed that our expectation of meteorologists as not being able to see in the future. But no, I just wanted to make two comments quickly. To Richard and the whole team, this is a very useful presentation. I agree with my colleagues. We've now had 2 board meetings in a row where we kind of go fairly in depth in a piece of the operations and what we're doing to be prepared going ahead. Since Melissa was just up here, I think what another area we could go into is our comm strategy for emergency notifications for customers so that we know which areas of communications are going to be deployed under what circumstances, et cetera. Maybe we can help fill in some of the gaps that may exist. I just want to take a moment to, because it's in this area, thank all the crews that responded regionally to Hurricane Ian. Obviously, whenever we see that we are helping one of our neighbors in need, disaster response, emergency response, it makes us feel really proud, not just of CPS Energy and our sister utility at SAWS, but also the entire community. It really demonstrates who we are as a city. And again, thank you to the crews that responded, that volunteered to go, and who came home safely and helped help our neighbors get back on their feet. So great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to item 13, fiscal year 2024 financial planning. Mr. Kuczynski.
All right, thank you, Chair Dr. Mackey. Good afternoon again, Board. So today, what I'm bringing forward to the Board is really a look ahead to next year. And ultimately, what we have for you is a review and ultimately a request for your approval to authorize us the ability to execute on 6 different financial transactions that would be executed over the next 12 months. And collectively, we're referring to this as our financial plan. And so as the board is aware, for the better part of this year, the economy's been facing persistent inflation, and the Federal Reserve has been attempting to fight that with interest rate increases. So there's obviously still a high probability that the Fed will continue this path through next year. What that means for us, of course, is there's a risk to paying higher interest rates, which everyone is exposed to. However, the counterbalance to that for us is to continue to demonstrate our strong financial health, which makes us a low borrowing risk and enables lower relative interest rates when we go out to market. So the overarching objective of this financing plan is to remain generally aligned with the discussion we had during our rate request and the upcoming budget request that we'll have as we go into next year. Specifically, this plan is set up to enable us to be flexible and be ready to execute, especially in this volatile environment, ensuring that your finance team has the flexibility to execute and take advantages of dips in the market if they present themselves is critical flexibility that can ultimately benefit our customers. We also wanted to ensure that the current liquidity or access to borrowing remains available to us even if it's unused. So on this slide is a list of 5 transactions that are more or less routine in nature that the board has some familiarity with, as you've previously seen something similar over the last year and a half or so. So I'll step through these briefly. The very first one on the page there for the 2014 refunding, this is actually a reauthorization. We had authorization previously from the board. If there are opportunities in the market for us to have interest savings, we'll take advantage of those. That authority is expiring, and so we are looking to extend that again for another year, and we'll take advantage of it if the market has any savings for us. The next one is a $100 million flexible rate revolving note. This is effectively a $100 million line of credit that we've had in place for a number of years. This board renewed it last year. This comes up annually for renewal. We are seeking to, again, just renew it for another year. The second item, that $500 million flexible rate revolving note, this was actually the $500 million line of credit that we took out right after Winter Storm Uri. It remains unused, but it had a 2-year term, and that is expiring in the spring of next year. Our recommendation is to extend it again for another couple of years
or until we resolve the litigation that's still currently outstanding. And then the fourth item is the $200 million tranche of our broader commercial paper program, which I'll speak about on the next slide. But it's a $700 million program with 3 banks that support it, and each of the tranches have different expiration dates. In order to keep that in place, we want to get authority so that next summer when State Street expires, we can, again, either extend with them or replace them as provider, but nonetheless keep it in place. And the last item on this page here is a refunding for our commercial paper program. Basically, as you know how this works, we will use the commercial paper program as we are spending for our capital plan, and as we fill up that commercial paper, we will take that short-term debt and take it long. And so we've historically been doing this for years, and that's what this authority on the last bullet indicates. So generally, more or less, items that we have seen in the past coming up again. The very last item here is different in nature, but still related to our commercial paper program. As I mentioned earlier, our commercial paper program is $700 million. And this request here is to increase it from $700 million to $1 billion. And it's really a reflection of the planned growth that our capital plan is looking to ultimately get to. And it's also consistent with our theme of ensuring that we've got relatively similar liquidity available, even if we don't actually access that borrowing. Another point that you can see here on the slide, it's been true in the recent past, the commercial paper program has been sized consistently with the size of the capital expenditures or the capital plan. And that's a little hard to see in the table there, but what you're looking at is the CP capacity being increased over the different years, close to or a little over 100% of the average spend. And so, as you know, we have a lot of upcoming expenditures, not just the maintaining our system and keeping up with growth, but we've talked about the additional spend that'll be necessary for our enterprise resource planning system, which is the IT infrastructure that we've talked about at length. There'll be future dollars for that. And then, as you know, the Rate Advisory Committee is currently discussing our generation future. There will likely be some support required there as well. So those are the drivers that'll get our capital plan up. This recommendation comes to you not just from my team, but also from our financial advisors, which are also here as well in support of this presentation. So with that, Chair Dr. Mackey, this is our last slide here, ultimately requesting the consideration for approval of the authority for us to execute over the next 12 months the following transactions on the slide.
So looking at slide 5, and you went through each of the transactions, what costs are associated with each of those? For example, when you say it's effectively a line of credit, there are probably people listening that say, I have a line of credit, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, typically you don't pay to maintain a line of credit.
Well, yeah, so in our case with the various lines, there's a cost for the unused component, and it ranges from 35 to 45 basis points.
For example, on a $500 million flexible rate revolving note, what does it cost us annually to have that in place?
So annually, that's a little over, I can do math for you right here. A little over $1 million.
That's what I thought,
we have in place.
Yeah. So just to be clear, these are not just facilities we set up and we can draw on them if we want to, but we're actually paying pretty good money to have them in place.
I mean, relative to the size of our $6 billion debt profile, I would say that the pricing is actually pretty affordable, but nonetheless, there's absolutely a cost that we have associated for unused capacity. But the flexibility that it provides us is critical, and the liquidity and access, having it unused but having access to it is a credit positive for the rating agencies. And so I think there's a lot of value in paying a couple $1 million or what it may be over the course of a year for the unused capacity. And that, again, would be the recommendations of our FAs as well, in addition to our team.
Okay, so I want to relate this to our metric for debt capitalization. And at the bottom of slide 5, you say you list the what you call the annual routine transactions, and you say these are annual routine transactions. The transactions will not add to the debt portfolio or negatively impact our financial metrics. But does that statement also hold true for slide 6, where you're talking about a new proposed transaction?
It does. So the,
And how, if it, because a debt capitalization ratio includes short-term debt, right, and long-term debt.
well, it includes debt that's been issued. So if I increase the capacity of this program from 700 to $1 billion, but it remains unused, then it's unused and it's not going towards.
If it's used, though, in its commercial paper, is it counted in that debt capitalization ratio?
Yeah, and what I will tell you is regardless of the size of this plan, probably the most important thing is we're not materially changing our debt plan issuance that we saw in our 5-year forecast for the budget. So if I was going to issue $500 million in debt, in the following year, I'll still do that, but I've got a commercial paper program now that has more flexibility in it as well. And so when you look at the debt capitalization metric that we had in the outer years, even if I increase this but still issue the same amount of debt that I had planned, you're still looking at a debt capitalization ratio maybe in the mid-62s, which was the peak that we had looked at over the 5-year span, and then, hopefully still coming down after that. So there's no material increase to that debt capitalization ratio that you'd see, assuming we continue to stick to the plan. It really is a tool in place for our team to have added flexibility to draw on funds for our capital plan. And I'd say the other important need for this commercial paper program is it doesn't force us to issue debt first and then use it for our spend, right? We get to the timing of the work could be impacted by supply chain, right? And maybe I don't need to spend money, so I don't want to take out debt until I need it. So the commercial paper program allows me to draw on it when absolutely necessary, borrow at the short-term rates now instead of using long-term debt, and then as I fill up this bucket, then I can take it long. And so it's been in place for as long as I've been here, and we've been using it for that manner. And so the increases that we've seen over time in 2012, and I forgot the years was on the previous slide, 2012, 2019, they've all been changes in capacity, not a change in the actual debt being drawn down on it.
Right. Well, and I like that bucket, analogy or whatever, because you think of commercial paper is unsecured short-term debt, and you don't and I know Janie Gonzalez running a business, you use that to finance payrolls, payables, inventories, and short-term liabilities. So you don't think of it being tied into capital projects, but that's your idea, is that you're using this commercial paper because of the flexibility and that sort of thing, and then when you get enough of it, then you turn it into some kind of long-term debt.
That's correct. Yes.
Right. When you're talking about the debt to capitalization ratio, I thought you were talking to the credit rating agencies about showing them how we're going to lower that. And now I just heard you say we were going to, is that part of it, that we were going to go up to 62 and then we start the decline?
Yeah. In the 5-year view, we showed next year was going to be our peak year in the mid-62s and then begin a decline. And it peaks in part because part of that plan showed us going back for another rate increase the following in year 3, and that helps push that down. But that is the arc that we had shown them, was going up in the mid-62s and then coming back down to the 60s by year 5.
So this all of what we're talking about here meshes with that?
It tracks with it, yes, sir.
Thank you.
You bet.
Be the brave one, yes.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Chair Gonzalez, second by Trustee Romero. Vice Chair Gonzalez?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Steen? Yes. Mayor? Trustee Romero?
Yes.
Chair Dr. Mackey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 14, we have adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion by trustee Gonzalez to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Gonzalez. Have a second?
Second by trustee Romero.
Trustee Romero, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, ayes carries. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Now we'll begin our second meeting. Would y'all like to take a 5-minute break or go ahead and proceed? Let's roll.
Roll. I'm just
Okay.
get up real quick.
All right. We have the San Antonio Energy Acquisition Public Facility Corporation meeting to be held on October 31st, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This time, Ms. Ramirez, would you please confirm a quorum?
Yes, sir. I have 3:36 as we begin. I have Chair Dr. Mackey, Vice Chair Gonzalez, Rudy Garza, Mayor Ron Nirenberg, Trustee Romero, Corey Kaczynski, and Trustee Steen. All members are present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. We have no public comments. I don't believe any public comments. No public comments. Okay, we'll move to consent agenda, approval of minutes of the PFC meeting held on 7/25/2022. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Garza to approve motion, and we have a second? Second by the mayor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes carry, motion carries. Thank you. We have item number 4, regular agenda, the PFC audit results. For discussion, Ms. Caroline Garcia from KPMG.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Johnson, VP of Finance and Accounting, and I'm just going to introduce our guests today. So as you know, our fiscal year 22 audit is substantially complete. And so we have our auditors, KPMG, here to present our results. We have Robert Nelson, the senior manager of the engagement. Now, Rob will be presenting the results today. Kellen Garcia, who is a partner of the engagement, could not be with us today, but she is joining us by WebEx. I also want to take this time to acknowledge some guests in attendance today. We have our financial advisors. We have Eric Brown with PFM and Don Gonzalez with Estrada Hinojosa. And we also have our bond counsel here, Clay Bimford and Lauren Ferrero with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. I will pass it to Rob for the presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Mackey, Chair of the Board of Directors, and to the whole committee, so thank you for having us here. Before we get started, I would just like to introduce myself. So as Julie mentioned, I'm Rob Nelson. I'm the lead audit engagement manager for the audit of PFC. So I'm speaking on behalf of Caroline Garcia. She's the lead audit partner. Unfortunately, she had a health matter occur this last week, so I'm going to be presenting on her behalf. And before we begin, I'd just like to mention it's been about a year since we've been engaged as the external auditors for CPS Energy and for PFC. So it's been a significant transition both for ourselves and for management. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to express our gratitude both to the officers and for some of the senior leadership staff. So beginning with the accounting function, would like to thank Julie Johnson, David Ramirez, Lindsay Fenderson, Lizeth Oliver, Julissa Flores. From Audit Services, Matt Mills, Ed Garza, Shelby Waltrip, the Controls and Risk team, Anthony Werland, Roger Gonzalez, Jennifer Barea, so many more. It's been a challenging year, but we really appreciate the gratitude and hospitality that's been shown to us. And so today we'd like to go through our presentation for our audit results of SA Energy Acquisition Public Facility Corporation. We'll abbreviate it as PFC for short. And of course, we'll leave it to the board of directors to decide if this is a trick or treat today. Okay, and bear with me as I learn the clicker here. So slide 2 These materials were provided as a pre-read, so slide 2 is an executive summary, just some of the highlights of the presentation that we're going to be going through. For any matters that are applicable, we'll have additional information that's provided in the subsequent slides. So slides 4 and 5 present a matrix of the communications that are required under the AICPA's auditing standards. So these are going to include the entire population of what could be applicable. Not all of these are going to be applicable for our audit of PFC, and if there's no matters to report or no applicability, that'll be noted on the slides. So we'll go through and highlight the ones that we'd like to discuss today. So beginning with the outstanding matters, we've listed a few that were outstanding as of the time we prepared this slide deck. That was last week. These are customary matters. There's no significant matters that are still outstanding, and when we issue our audit report, that'll signal that these have been resolved. On slide 5, we'd just like to note that as far as illegal acts, there's no matters to report. We did not identify any actual or suspected noncompliance with laws and regulations, including illegal acts. As far as difficult or contentious matters for which we consulted, we did consult with KPMG's national office. We call it the Department of Professional Practice, related to one accounting matter, and that's the valuation of PFC's commodity swap. So we'll talk about that in subsequent slides. As far as written communications, we do have an engagement letter that's been executed with PFC. Upon the completion of our audit, we will be issuing a required communications letter. We call it an AUC 260 letter. That's the AICPA standard. Just really details the approach and the results of our audit, and that will be issued to the Board of Directors. And so we'll move on to slide 6. Slide 6 details the uncorrected audit misstatements. These are adjustments that were identified by ourselves or management of PFC that were proposed to be adjusted in the financial statements, but were not. And so we do have one identified uncorrected misstatement. This is solely related to a non-GAAP policy, and what that means is that management is aware. They're just accounting for the transaction in a slightly different manner than what GAAP might prescribe. This is evaluated, and we'll address this in a subsequent slide, just how that might affect the needs and the understanding of users of the financial statements, and conclude that there is in fact no material difference when compared to the standard GAAP accounting. Moving on to slide 7. We do have one corrected audit misstatement, and this is related to the recognition of the fair value of PFC's commodity swap derivative instrument. We'll address this in a subsequent slide as well. So moving on to slide 8, as I mentioned, PFC maintains one non-GAAP accounting policy, and this is the amortization of its bond premium. PFC utilizes the redemption price method for amortizing its bond premium, and this is consistent with the contractual agreements for which PFC is a party to. GAAP, and specifically the Government Accounting Standards Board, prescribes the use of the effective interest rate method. So management has quantified the difference between those two methods and concluded that it's not material. And as the related debt approaches its maturity, that difference will actually decline over time. So there is an assertion there's no material effect on the financial statements. Moving on to slide 9, we have a required communication for any control deficiencies that rise to a material weakness or a significant deficiency in internal control. As part of our initial audit of PFC, we were engaged to perform an audit of the effectiveness of PFC's internal control over financial reporting. So we do have one matter to report, and that is consistent with the corrected misstatement on the previous slide. This is recognition of the fair value of PFC's commodity swap derivative instrument. If you're familiar with the accounting frameworks, derivative instruments are required to be recognized at fair value on the statement of net position. So this is an estimate of the future cash flows that will result as of that contract. So this is an estimate, and though this was a corrected misstatement in control deficiency for the year, it's not indicative of anything related to fraud or misappropriation of assets. It's purely an accounting matter and an estimate in nature. Moving on to slide 10. As far as our auditor's report, as of today, we do expect to issue an unmodified opinion on PFC's financial statements. So that is a clean opinion on the financial statements. There will be a modified opinion on the opinion for the effectiveness of internal control. That's due to the control deficiencies we just spoke about. And we will also be issuing an agreed upon procedures report in connection with PFC's compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. There will be one insertion of an additional paragraph in our financial statement audit opinion. This is just to note that management's discussion analysis is a required part of the financial statements in accordance with the GASB framework, and that is considered supplemental information that's presented, with the financial statements. Slide 11, as far as our risk assessment and planning and planned audit strategy, we did present our annual audit plan to the board back in January, I believe January 20th. And so there's been no significant changes to our risk assessment or planned audit strategy, except for the valuation of that commodity swap that we spoke about earlier. That is the sole significant account that we've identified that's considered to be an estimate with a risk of material misstatement. And moving on to slide 12, do you want to take the opportunity to discuss the company's accounting for that significant estimate? So as disclosed in the footnotes, that's the footnotes of PFC's financial statements, the company does recognize the fair value of the commodity swap. And this is a function of a forward pricing curve. So that's the forward price of natural gas at the Waha basis. And that is discounted back at the company's risk-adjusted discount rate to calculate the fair value of the instrument. So we've involved our valuation specialists in auditing this account balance and have concluded that management's assumptions are appropriate and reasonable. Slide 13, these detail the significant financial statement disclosures. As far as our audit procedures and review of the financial statements, we did not identify any matters to report with respect to these disclosures. And moving on to slide 14, we do have certain independence communications to present. So as part of our audit of the financial statements, we do also provide management with a subscription to KPMG's accounting research online. So this is an online tool that aggregates publicly available accounting and auditing literature. As part of offering this, as well as the subsequent custom learning portal, we're not providing any client-specific advice or advocating for any position that PFC may have. This is purely publicly available information, so we don't believe it contravenes any of the four overarching principles of auditor independence. Moving on to slide 15. Slide 15 includes certain inquiries that we performed of the board. This was during the planning phase of the audit. So these are updated periodically throughout our audit procedures. As a result of the inquiries and as a result of the audit procedures we performed, during the year, there were no matters for us to report to the committee. And that's the extent of our prepared remarks, so I'm happy to stand for any questions the board may have.
Yes, Trustee Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. In the first place, to begin with something positive, to me this shows the value of rotating auditing firms.
Yes.
I know you supported.
Yes.
Auditor rotation brings us new sets of eyes and different perspectives, so we appreciate that. Let me just go briefly through this and see if I understand it. The issue is how to appropriately value the commodity swap derivative instrument. For many years, Baker Tilly concurred with management's use of the redemption price method of amortizing its bond premium, and so now KPMG comes along and maintains that GAAP requires the effective rate, interest rate method. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've characterized this as a difficult or contentious matter, and you went so far as to consult your firm's Department of Professional Practice to confirm that view.
Yes, sir. And one point of clarification is, so there's the uncorrected misstatement related to the bond premium amortization. That's a non-GAAP policy that the company maintains. That one we do not consider difficult. That's purely a method of amortization prescribed by GAAP. The recognition of the fair value of the derivative instrument, that was a difficult matter for which we consulted. And as part of doing that consultation, both myself, Caroline, our reviewing partner, reviewed the accounting we expected for the commodity swap itself. We reviewed disclosures and financial statements for similar entities, other public facility corporations throughout the country that file their financial statements on IMA and publicly available for us, and then also consulted with our national office.
All right. So it appears that after arguing it out, CPS Energy's team has acknowledged KPMG's view and booked an adjustment. Is that correct?
That's correct. And as a point of clarification, I believe management may have discussed this as well. Back when PFC was formed, there was a different accounting standard. So back in 2007, the GASB's accounting standard for derivatives was different. And actually, the auditor at time, there was a fair value of the derivative that was disclosed back in 2007, and I believe all the way up through 2010. At that point in time, the GASB published a new standard for accounting for derivative instruments. And it's not uncommon that there are interpretations that ultimately prove not to be consistent with industry practice. So really, as we did our root cause analysis, it went back to that period when that standard was implemented and actually reversed the original accounting for the instrument.
All right. And how much is the adjustment?
The adjustment, it's detailed on, I believe, slide 7. It's approximately $110 million.
That's what I thought. All right.
And I think I do want to just acknowledge that that has no effect on the net position of PFC, and it ultimately has no effect on the rates it charges to CPS Energy. That's an estimation of the fair value of the contract, and the actual amounts realized by PFC continue just to be the amount of cash it exchanges with its counterparty, the Royal Bank of Canada. That's designed ultimately at the end of the day to recover PFC's costs and its debt service.
So KPMG's opinion on the PFC's financial statement, as you mentioned, is clean and unmodified because the adjustment was booked, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So there is a separate PFC internal controls audit, and there are material weaknesses being reported.
Yes, sir, and that's due to the need for that adjustment to be recorded.
All right, just some quick questions. On slide 5 that you showed, next to written communication, why is this being referred to as an uncorrected misstatement? You just said it was corrected, right?
Yes, so the commodity swap fair value is a corrected misstatement.
I don't know if we could look at slide 5.
Sure, let me pull that back for you. So on slide 6, we have the...
No, I was going to look at slide 5, just asking a question.
Sure.
Is that it? You see, right, let's see. Where it says written communications, it says including summary of uncorrected misstatement.
Yes, sir. So the uncorrected misstatement presented on this slide is related to that non-GAAP policy for bond premium amortization.
Right, but I thought we've corrected it now.
The PFC has corrected the fair value of the commodity swap. That is a separate matter to the bond premium amortization. So 2 matters. One is corrected, one is uncorrected.
Okay. And so that's why on slide 9, you're under material weaknesses, you're still describing it as unremediated?
That's correct. So for the unremediated control deficiency relates to the commodity swap fair value. And that's because we did need to propose and PFC needed to process that correcting audit misstatement. And so when we say unremediated, what that means is the control only operated one time during the period. The recognition of the fair value is an annual process, and PFC only has one derivative instrument. So that control can only operate one time. And since we proposed the adjustment to PFC, that means the control didn't operate effectively in our opinion. And so this year, since that was the only time it could operate, it's unremediated this year. That's a little bit different if the control operated on a monthly frequency. For example, review of a bank reconciliation that might occur January, February, March, April, every month throughout the period. And if we identify a deviation or an error earlier in the year, management has the opportunity to correct it on a prospective basis. So when we say unremediated, there's no cause for concern. It just simply means there was no opportunity for that control to operate again during the period.
Thank you. And then just to sum it up, as a director, should I be concerned about this?
No, I don't believe there's cause for particular concern. We do need to report it as a result of our audit procedures. But the nature of it is such that it is an accounting estimate, and it doesn't affect the amounts that are ultimately realized by PFC in its statement of changes of net position. And again, it doesn't affect the rates it charges to CPS Energy or the matters that it realizes from the commodity swap counterparty. At the end of the day, there is no net effect on the statement of financial position. It's purely an accounting requirement that this is recognized on the financial statements.
So you're telling me I should not be concerned?
We had extensive cooperation and discussion with management, and I think they understand the position that we're coming from in the accounting analysis as to why the instrument is recorded on the statement of net position. And again, going back to 2007 and the early years of the entity, this fair value was actually disclosed in the notes to the financial statements. So it was a misapplication of the facts when the GASB standard was implemented and has since been corrected.
Yes, sir. I was just asking you if I should be concerned about it.
No.
You're saying no? All right.
No, I wouldn't. And, that is based on both the facts we mentioned as well as management's openness to understanding the matter and willingness to correct the adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
At this time, Mr. Garza, I've asked, because of this concern right here, I've asked that we had some of our financial advisors, third-party financial advisors, and I kind of want to hear their perspective on these issues. Accounting requirement, I think it's Clay Benford, Eric Brown, and Henry Host. If y'all please come forward. Okay, you all have listened to these issues right here and perspective issues. It's something that we have prolonged, been using from another accountant for many years, but now this is transitions accounting. What is your perspective on this right here, these issues?
Sure, yeah, and let me introduce myself first. So my name's Eric Brown. I am a director at PFM Financial Advisors. We've served as financial advisor to CPS Energy since 2007, alongside our co-advisors from Estrada Hinojosa. And we also served as advisor on this original prepaid transaction back in 2007. So we have significant familiarity with both the issues particular to CPS Energy and the PFC, as well as the transaction itself. So I can speak to the impact of this change, both relative to investors in CPS Energy debt and in PFC debt. The bottom line is there's no impact of this change whatsoever. Taking CPS Energy debt first, the change is really confined to the PFC financial statements, which are separate and apart from CPS Energy entirely. So CPS Energy bond investors will find that this change does not impact them in any way. nor will they find this to be worrisome in any way, given that this is an entirely different issuer and structure. Similarly, holders of PFC debt fully understand the nature of the commodity swap agreement, and they understand that the value of the commodity swap has no bearing on the financial security of bondholders, and termination of the swap does not result in a termination payment from the PFC and cannot result in a termination payment from the PFC. So accordingly, in our opinion, this change in the accounting has no impact whatsoever on either CPS Energy or PFC investors.
Okay. Thank you. You have another comment by the other gentleman?
Yes, Dr. Mackey, for the record, Don Gonzalez with Estrada y Hinojosa. We serve as co-financial advisors with PFM. And we concur with the comments by PFM. And I guess as an example, I would almost liken this to a change that occurred some years ago with respect to pension obligations. So there was an obligation in the past that may not have been recognized for accounting purposes, but there was a change in accounting rules and requirements, and so now that has to be booked from an accounting perspective.
Yes.
Kind of liken this to a similar type matter, where at one time, under accounting rules and procedures, it was something that did not need to be booked in the same manner that KPMG is suggesting that it be booked now. And so accounting rules, similar to the legal profession and other things, we find change from time to time. And so in order to be compliant, you have to make these adjustments in your financial reporting. And we think that, from an actual perspective of what the financial impact is, as PFM described, we're in concurrence with that, and we don't see any material financial impact to CPS Energy or to the PFC with respect to this.
Mr. Benford, you have anything you'd like to add to it? Or your bond counsel?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Mackey. And for the record, Clay Benford representing the PFC as bond counsel. Mr. Steen, we looked at this also from a protective perspective, because understanding that we are the counsel to the PFC and by extension the board, we challenged pretty vociferously the response from KPMG to confirm that there was a change that was in place. One, was it warranted? And two, what is the net impact to the organization and the representatives of it? We have surveyed on a national basis the number of PFCs that report in this way and can report back to you that there are, I would say, a split in the reporting on this. In the minority is the way that the PFC previously reported this. There was in the majority the way that you will now be reporting on a go-forward basis. But as the others before me have said, clearly an indication of an interpretation of a particular position. Once we received or we came to a determination that a change would in fact be in play, then we looked to determine what would be the impact of that, not only to the organization itself, but from a disclosure perspective, with myself being extremely concerned about what would be the net financial, actual operating impact on the financial position. Upon determining that this is an above the line, so to speak, accounting treatment, change in prior practice, no change to the actual financial performance, agree and concur with the financial advisors on the impact of the financial markets. We will disclose this through our normal course that there has been a change in practice in reporting on a go-forward basis, but we did receive a clean, unmodified opinion, and that there is no impact to the financial performance, past, present, or future, as a result of this change as it applies to the PFC. So I would like to answer your question that I say, in my professional opinion, no concern from your perspective. Thank you.
I have a comment. Yeah, I want to be careful with the language that we use on the diocese, because again, I want to reiterate, it's a change of practice. That happens quite often when it comes to audits. Having experience working with the government myself, they do change the rules often. So again, I want to make sure that we're all aware of carefully what language we use. Again, this is a change in practice, not that, again, internally we weren't doing what we were supposed to do as a fiduciary responsibility, both as personnel and as board of directors.
Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez, and thank you all very much for clearing, and thank you all very much for this. Okay, we'd like to proceed to item number 4, update of bylaws and Form 101, discussion and vote for Ms. Shannon Ramirez.
Sir, we no longer need to update the bylaws. What I would like is to get a vote confirming my ability to file a statement of change of registered office and agent, listing myself as the new registered agent.
Yes. We have a motion? Yes. We got to vote on it. Yes. We have a motion by Trustee Steen. Do we have a second?
Second.
By CEO Garza. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes carry. Aye. Okay, we have a closeout. Do we have a closeout? Any closeout?
Yeah, we have Julie.
Yes, come up, Julie.
I didn't capture any action items, sir.
I was going to say, there are no action items today.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by CEO Garza. Do we have a second?
Mayor, we've been saying everything all day.
We have a second by the mayor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes carry, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for
Thank you, Mayor.
a great day. Thank you.